the French Agricultural Department, probably responding to hunger and starvation experienced by both soldiers and citizens during the French Revolutionary War, issued a challenge to any would-be food technologist to see if they could come up with a fifth major way to preserve food, and they would be given an award of 12,000 francs. That challenge was met by a guy named Nicolas Appert. Nicolas Appert was a bad boy celebrity chef. He cooked for royalty, and then with his riches, he retired to open a candy shop, and he retired very young, and then, before he had turned 30, and that actually provided he's still working, he's making candy. That provided the perfect setting to do food science experiments. And so Appert spent probably a decade working and through how to preserve food using his equipment in the evening. And he kept bringing it to the French government and asking them if it met with their approval. And he kept getting either ignored or sent back and told things like, oh, the broth is too weak and so forth. But eventually in 1809, they accepted what he had offered. And what it was food that had been put inside a glass container, and then the glass container had been put inside boiling water in a larger container and slowly cooked for a period of time, and then he would stop up the glass container. Now, Appert didn't know this. It would take Pasteur 60 years later to figure out what was actually happening, but what he was doing was he was killing all the microorganisms inside the food, and then by closing up the container while it was still hot, no new microorganisms could enter. In 1809, the French Agricultural Department awarded him the 12,000 francs in return for relinquishing his claim to his discovery, which he did. That discovery was canning, and it really revolutionized the world. It's still one of the most important food preservation techniques in our larder. And Appert, he died a pauper and anonymous. And I feel like that there should be a moral here, but the only one I could get was don't be a government contractor. I don't think that's the one they want to I want to promote. Okay. The second major foray into food science by the military came almost 150 years later when the U.S. entered World War II. And suddenly, the Army had to ramp up from feeding 400,000 soldiers to 11.6. And to put that in a little more scalable terms for us, it would be as if you had a dinner party for 12 and suddenly received word that 385 people were going to attend. To say that the Quartermaster Corps, I don't remember that word, quartermaster, supplies for the Army, was prepared to do this would have been an understatement. In 1941, when the war started, they had just two modern rations, the C ration, and I say modern because they were both ready to eat and portable. The C ration, which was a stew in a can, and the D ration, which was a deliberately inedible chocolate bar. It was intended to be an emergency ration. That's why it was inedible, and they didn't want the guys eating the chocolate, because, I mean, who can resist chocolate? And this, they had basically no food research. They had a small lab with 3 employees who had developed these 2 rations and no outside projects. These rations did not fare well when they were shipped all around the world. They spoiled, they molded, the food developed off flavors, fat separated out and different ingredients separated, they got discolored, the packaging fell apart, and the cans rusted. And in response to that, the Army created the biggest food and packaging science program that had ever been created. And that little laboratory in Chicago that had started with 3 people, by the end of the war, had 300 employees. It had different focus areas from food chemistry to nutrition, vitamins, and sensory evaluation. And they had over 500 outside projects with industry and universities. That system has pretty much stayed in place.